You know that sound when the deadbolt slides into place? You have heard it 1,000 times. You come home after the longest day of your life. The dogs are restless behind the door. You slide the key in and you hear it. That specific clunk of the deadbolt sliding into place. That clunk that tells your whole body, the day is done. You're safe. Whatever was chasing you stays outside. I know that sound too. I have chased that feeling for years. The feeling of done, of safe, of finally being able to set the weight down and breathe. In 2008, I did not know if I would ever hear that sound again. I was staring at a house that was worth less than half what I paid for it. The economy had collapsed. My spouse's job disappeared when the resort closed. Banks were calling, offering to let us skip payments, and I was tempted. But that house was not just a house. It was my mother's home, and I had made a promise to my father before he passed that I would always take care of her. So skipping a payment was not an option. That lock had to stay turned. But this morning, I need you to hear something before we go any further. The lock already turned. You just have not heard it yet. Good Friday is a special day, a day of life lessons. And these lessons still apply every day of our life. 2,000 years ago, Jesus spoke one Greek word from the cross, Tetelestai. It wasn't a religious word. It was a word stamped on ancient tax receipts. It meant paid in full, balance zero, nothing owed. Today reveals the 4 places that word appeared, and why the last one will change how you see yourself permanently. Can you believe it? 2,000 years ago, a man bowed his head on a Roman cross and made that sound for your soul. Father. Some of us walked into this morning carrying a weight we cannot even name. It is sitting on our chest like a mortgage we cannot pay. Before we open your word, before we study, before we do anything else, would you just let us hear the lock turn? Would you let us feel the deadbolt slide into place? We are listening. The Gospel of John, chapter 19, verse 30. When he had received the drink, Jesus said, "It is finished." With that, he bowed his head and gave up his spirit. 2 words in English, 1 word in Greek, and it changed everything. I need to tell you something about the timing of this episode, because I do not think it is an accident that you press play this morning. Tonight, not next week, not in some distant calendar year, tonight, as the sun goes down, Passover begins. Jewish families around the world are setting their Seder tables right now. They are preparing the unleavened bread. They are placing the bitter herbs. They are getting ready to retell the oldest story of liberation in human history. The night God said to the angel of death, "Pass over my people." Good Friday marks the day that God's own Son became the final Passover lamb. Do you understand what is happening on the calendar this week? The original lamb and the Lamb of God are sharing the same week in 2026. This does not happen with this proximity every year, and you are here for it. While the world is preparing a Seder meal, heaven has already prepared a seat for you. Isaiah wrote about this moment 700 years before it happened. Isaiah 53, verse 5. He was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. The punishment that brought us peace was upon him, and by his wounds we are healed. Now here is what most people miss. The Hebrew word for pierced in that verse is halal, and the Hebrew word for peace in that same verse in shalom. Halal and shalom live in the same sentence. The piercing and the peace are not sequential. They are simultaneous. The wound is the healing. The cross is the peace. They happen in the same breath. And that is the week you are standing in. Passover and Good Friday. The piercing and the peace. The same breath. Now let me take you inside the word. Because most English Bibles translate what Jesus said as "it is finished," 3 English words, but Jesus did not speak English on the cross. He spoke one Greek word, Tetelestai, and that word was not religious language. This is the part that changed everything for me when I first studied it. Tetelestai was an everyday word. People used it in 4 completely different areas of first century life, and every single one of them matters for what you are carrying this morning. When a debt was paid in full in the ancient world, the creditor would take the receipt and write one word across it, Tetelestai. Archaeologists have found first-century papyrus tax receipts with this word stamped on them. It meant paid in full, balance 0, nothing owed, the account is closed. Grace is not a ballpark figure. It is an exact transaction. He knows the penny of your pain. And I want to tell you a story that happened in a coffee shop in Johannesburg, South Africa. A woman named Yolanda Cuba, a business executive, a busy woman, the kind of person who has 14 things on her mind before 9 a.m., walked into a cafe in Morningside. She was waiting for her daughter to finish school trials. She was deep in her phone. And when the waitress came to her table, Yolanda admitted she placed her order without even looking up. She did not see the person standing in front of her. And that waitress refused to leave the table until Yolanda looked her in the eye and said good morning. Yolanda was convicted. When she left, she put down a 1,000 Rand tip, about $55. And as she walked out the door, the waitress ran after her in tears, because she had prayed that morning for exactly 1,000 Rand. Not 900, not 1,100, 1,000. The exact amount she was short for her rent to avoid eviction. A woman who would not look up from her phone was carrying the exact answer to a prayer she did not even know had been prayed. Romans 5 verse 8 says this, "But God demonstrates his own love for us in this: while we were still sinners, Christ died for us." The Greek word that should wreck you in that verse is eti. It means while. While. Not after you cleaned up, not once you got your act together. While you were still staring at your phone. While you were still rude. While the debt was still being accumulated, the payment was made, before the debtor even knew the donor's name. The second place this word appeared was in the temple. When a priest inspected a lamb brought for sacrifice and found it without defect, no broken bone, no disease, no blemish, the priest would declare, Tetelestai, "This lamb is acceptable. This lamb is sufficient." A shelter in Bronkhorstspruit, South Africa, celebrated something that had been 12 years coming. An Afghan hound named Gibson, who had lived in the Wet Nose Animal Rescue Center for 12 years, was finally adopted. 4,380 days of being walked past. 12 years of people looking into his kennel and choosing a different dog. A younger dog. A flashier dog. a dog that did not require so much patience. And on Valentine's Day, of all days, a family walked in and specifically asked for the longest resident. They did not want the puppy. They wanted the one everyone else had overlooked. The priest did not declare Gibson worthy because he was young or flashy. He endured. He was still there after 4,380 days, and someone finally came looking for the one the world had already written off. If God sees a dog named Gibson after 12 years in a concrete kennel, he sees a father named Rahim in a refugee camp this morning. No one is invisible in the bank of heaven. Stay with me, because the next sector is the one that might permanently change the way you see yourself. The third place Tetelestai showed up was in the courts. When a prisoner had served the full term of his sentence, a document was posted on the prison door with one word written across it: Tetelestai. The sentence has been served. The penalty is satisfied. You are free to go. In 2020, a hairstylist from Elmhurst, Illinois, named Katie Sakala, was diagnosed with MDS, myelodysplastic syndrome. It is a blood disorder that can become fatal. Her doctors at Northwestern Medicine, led by Dr. Jayesh Mehta, searched the International Bone Marrow Registry for a genetic match. The odds of finding a perfect match from a stranger are staggering. But the database flagged a 26-year-old man in Poland named Karol Zwierzycki. He had registered as a donor years earlier, never expecting to be called. When he got the notification that a woman in America was dying, he did not hesitate. Now here's what most people do not know about bone marrow transplants. For 2 full years after the procedure, the donor and recipient are legally forbidden from knowing each other's names. International protocol. They could only exchange anonymous letters through the registry. Katie did not know Carol's face, his country, or his last name. She just knew that someone, somewhere, had given the cells that were keeping her alive. And here's the part that will stop you. When a bone marrow transplant is successful, the donor's marrow produces the recipient's blood, which means the recipient's blood type changes to the donor's. Katie's blood was no longer her own. It belonged to a stranger in Poland she had never met. 2 Corinthians 5:21. God made him who had no sin to be sin for us, so that in him we might become the righteousness of God. Scholars call this the Great Exchange. On the cross, Jesus did not just pay a debt. He traded identities. He took on what was ours so we could take on what was his. When God looks at your blood work now, he does not see your type. He sees the donor's. You do not just get his help, you get his credit score. You get his standing with the Father. When the 2-year blackout period ended and Katie was declared cancer-free, both she and Carol signed consent forms to release their identities. They spoke for the first time on a video call. And when Katie and her husband Mikey started planning their wedding in February 2026, she knew there was one person who had to be in the room. She flew Carol from Poland to Illinois. Most of the wedding guests thought he was a distant relative. And during the reception, Katie took the microphone and told the room that the man standing in the back was the reason she was breathing, the reason she was married, the reason her blood was pumping. He did not know her name, her face, or her country. He just knew someone was in debt to a disease they could not pay off. He gave the cells, she took the life. And the paid in full receipt was signed at an altar in Elmhurst, Illinois. There is a fourth sector. The Greek word Tetelestai was used by artists. When a painter or a sculptor finished their masterpiece, they would step back from the work and say, Tetelestai. It is accomplished. The vision is complete. Nothing needs to be added. But I want to show you one more Greek word in John 19:30, because there is a word hiding in that verse that most sermons skip entirely. The verse says, Jesus bowed his head. The Greek word for bowed is Klino, and Klino does not mean collapsed. It does not mean slumped. Klino means to lean, to lay down, to rest your head the way you lay your head on a pillow. It is the exact same word used in Matthew 8:20 when Jesus said, Foxes have dens and birds have nests, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head. Do you hear that? His entire earthly ministry, Jesus had nowhere to rest, nowhere to lay his head. And on the cross, in the single worst moment a human being has ever endured, he finally did. He laid his head down. The cross became the place where the restless Son of Man finished his work and rested. Hebrews 10 verse 14. For by one sacrifice he has made perfect forever those who are being made holy. The Greek phrase for forever in that verse is eis to dienikes. It means unto perpetuity, without interruption, continuously. The doneness never expires. The lock does not unlock. When Jesus bowed his head, that was the sound of the deadbolt sliding into place for your soul. The intruder of shame is locked out. The work of the day is over. You are home. I told you at the beginning that in 2008, I was staring at a house that was worth less than half what I paid for it. The economy had collapsed. Money was not coming in. Banks were saying skip the payment, and I could not, because I had made a promise to my dying father that I would always take care of my mother. Her home was not a line item on a budget, it was a covenant. And I want to be honest with you, I did not know how God was going to do it. I was praying for a miracle. I was waiting for the helicopter, the dramatic rescue, the phone call that changes everything. Instead, God sent a weekend news anchor on the internet, talking about paying off your mortgage early. And my first thought was, this is crazy. How do you take a 20-year mortgage and pay it off in 5 years? I almost scrolled past it. I almost closed the tab. But something made me stop. I watched. I listened. I modified his approach because parts of it were confusing, and I still do not fully understand how it worked. But it did. I paid off that mortgage in 3 years, not 5, 3, during a recession. While neighbors on my street were packing boxes, God did not send a helicopter. He sent information on a screen. He sent a rowboat that looked like a browser tab, and I almost missed it. The way the man on the roof almost missed the rowboat and the motorboat and the helicopter. You know that story. The man stuck in a flood, praying for God to save him, and he waves off every rescue because it does not look miraculous enough. When he drowns and gets to heaven, God says, I sent you 2 boats and a helicopter. What were you waiting for? We had our own version of that. My spouse and I were kayaking on Lake Roosevelt with our 2 dogs, the original Toby and his half-sister Tammy. We had a single kayak for me and a double for my spouse and the dogs. Halfway through, the double started taking on water. The current pulled them out to the middle of the lake. And here's the thing we did not realize until we looked at the photos later. Toby knew. He had been on the end where the water was coming in, and in every single photo, he is moving closer and closer to my spouse, practically doing a piggyback ride on her. He felt the breach before we saw it. The animal knew what was wrong before the humans figured it out. I paddled out to them. The kayak was sinking. We knew the dogs had to get out to lighten the load. I looked at Tammy and asked her to jump. She looked down at the water, deep, dark, nothing to stand on, and she did not want to go. I asked her again, and she jumped. I had a pool noodle in my kayak for back support. I threaded it through her life vest strap and paddled us both back to shore. With less weight, my spouse and Toby got the double kayak back safely. A foam pool noodle. That was the rescue. Not a Coast Guard helicopter. Not a dramatic airlift. A piece of foam threaded through a life vest strap by a man in a single kayak. And Tammy had to trust it enough to jump out of the boat that was sinking. Sometimes God sends the warning through a dog who will not stop moving toward safety. Sometimes he sends the rescue through a foam noodle. The question is not whether God is speaking. The question is whether you are paying attention to what does not look like a miracle. Some of you are in a double kayak right now that is taking on water. A job, a marriage, a financial plan that looked safe 6 months ago. And God is not sending a helicopter. He is sending information, a person, a nudge, something that looks too simple to possibly be the answer. And you are staring at the deep water thinking, that cannot be it. Jump. The noodle holds. He took my 20-year mortgage and ended it in 3. He can take your 20-year struggle and end it today. Good Friday is the day the Bank of Heaven issued a satisfaction of mortgage for your soul. And when Jesus shouted Tetelestai, he was not just talking about your sins. He was talking about the entire debt of your not enough. Not enough money, not enough holiness, not enough time to fix the mess. You have been sitting on the roof, waiting for a helicopter. But God sent you this video as a rowboat, and right now, He is asking you to jump. I'm going to pray now, and I am not going to pray politely. I am not going to pray for a nice Friday. I am praying for a satisfaction of mortgage on your soul. Before we speak to the Father, I want you to do something physical. Whether you are driving, whether you are walking, or whether you are sitting on the edge of your bed right now, can you feel the weight of your own head right now? Just notice it. The 10 or 12 pounds of bone and thought and worry. Your neck has been bracing that weight all day, all week, all year. Some of you have been bracing for a foreclosure that was canceled before you were born. What if, just for this next breath, you did not have to hold it anymore? As I pray through these next few minutes, let a face come to mind. It might be someone you love. It might be someone you have not forgiven. It might be your own face. Just let it come. Father, I lift up the one who is looking at their Sunday clothes right now and feeling like a fraud. The one who thinks they have skipped too many payments on holiness to sit in a pew this weekend. The one who did something on Tuesday night that they are still carrying on Friday morning. Remind them right now that the seat was prepaid. Not by their performance, not by their track record, by the blood of a donor whose type now runs through their veins. Collapse the scorecard. Let them hear the deadbolt turn on their shame. We apply Tetelestai to the kitchen table tonight, Lord. For the husband and wife who are sitting across from each other, calculating the interest on old wounds, remembering every slight from 2022, keeping a ledger that nobody asked them to keep. Lord, if you canceled our unpayable debt, give them the power to release the late fees they are charging their spouse. Let them let the dinner get cold tonight, and let the grace get warm. For the mom or the dad, replaying the tape of this morning's temper, the one who lost their cool, and now they are drowning in shame, convinced they have overdrawn their child's emotional bank account. Father, stand as the bodyguard of grace between that parent and their regret. Remind them that one bad payment does not lose the house. You are the restorer of the years the locusts ate and the temper took. The account is not closed. The door is not locked against them. You are still there. For the ones sitting on the roof in the flood right now, Lord, holding a medical report they have not told anyone about, carrying a weight that is heavier than any mortgage because it is written on their body, not on paper. Help them see the rowboats, the doctors, the treatments, the information, the friend who keeps calling and they keep sending to voicemail. Let them trust the pool noodle. It does not look like a miracle. It looks like an appointment. It looks like a phone call they do not want to make. But it is the boat you sent. Let them jump into the healing you have already provided. For the adult child who is bracing right now for a dinner table this Sunday, sitting across from a parent they have not forgiven, carrying a 20-year mortgage of bitterness that has been accruing interest every holiday, every birthday, every phone call that went wrong. Lord, compress the time. What takes a lifetime for man, you can settle in an afternoon. Let the paid in full of the cross settle the debt of the childhood, not because the parent earned it, but because the child deserves to be free. And for the one who is relieved they are not going to church this year, the one who feels like they walked away from the bank, the one who thinks that because they are not in a building, God is not in their mourning. Remind them, Father, that you are not in the building. You are in the rest. You are standing in their living room right now, in the sound of the coffee maker and the creak of the floor, saying, "It is finished. You did not leave me. I was never in the stained glass. I was always in the stillness, and I am here." And I need to be honest with you. I am not praying from above these people. I am praying from among them. I have been the hypocrite. I have kept the scorecard. I have snapped at people I love and replayed the tape at 3 a.m. I have sat on the roof waving off the boat because it did not look miraculous enough. So when I say Tetelestai over your life this morning, I am saying it over mine too. The debt is the same. The donor is the same. The lock turns the same way for all of us. One more thing before the declaration. If you are in the dark place right now, if you are not in the Tetelestai yet, if you are still in the scream, I need you to hear this. Before Jesus said, "It is finished," he said something else. In Matthew 27:46, he cried out, my God, why have you forsaken me?" That is Psalm 22, verse 1. The cry of abandonment came before the shout of completion. The darkness came before the deadbolt. If you are in the Psalm 22 moment right now, the why, the where are you, the silence that feels like God packed his bags and left, hold on, because John 19:30 is coming. The cry is not the ending, it is the setup. Friday is not the last day of the story. It never was. Colossians chapter 2, verse 14. He canceled the charge of our legal indebtedness, which stood against us and condemned us. He has taken it away, nailing it to the cross. It was not just a man nailed to the cross. It was your certificate of debt. Every I am not enough. Every I failed again. Every I cannot pay this back. Every 3 a.m. calculation that always comes up short. It was nailed to the wood until it was dead. You are not underwater anymore. You are standing on the finished work. So walk into this Friday carrying the deadbolt sound in your chest. When the gas prices stare at you from the pump, when the bill hits the counter, when the shame tries to pick the lock, you tell it, Tetelestai. The account is closed. The donor's blood runs through my veins, and the lock does not unlock. You are home. Just breathe. You are held. The work is done. Rest. Here is your phrase for today. Write it on your hand. Tape it to your mirror. Say it when the 3 a.m. math starts running. The lock already turned. Because God is the satisfaction of my debt, I am free from the mortgage of not enough. Because God is the donor who changed my blood, I am carrying the identity of the one who saved me. Because God is the rest at the end of the longest day, I am home, and the lock has turned. That is John 19, verse 30. And that is his still, small voice. If you heard the deadbolt turn in your spirit this morning, do me a favor. Drop a lock emoji in the comments. Let us know you are home. If this prayer met you where you needed it, share it with somebody who is still sitting on the roof. Be their rowboat today. If you missed yesterday's episode, go back and listen. It will meet you right where this one leaves off. I love you. I am proud of you. And I will see you tomorrow. In the name of Jesus, amen. If this prayer stirred something deep and you feel like you need more than words right now, please don't carry it alone. Reach out to someone you trust, a friend, a pastor, a counselor. You're worth the help, and wise support is one of God's good gifts too. You're not alone. I'm praying for you.